Hello everyone, and welcome to the Tome of Silver, the show where I randomly select a game from my collection, review it, and add it to an ever-growing ranking list. The last time we visited the PlayStation Vita here on the channel, we looked at Mary Skelter Nightmares, a dark, anime-themed dungeon crawler. The Vita is home to a surprisingly large number of dungeon crawlers, spanning a wide spectrum of difficulty. Mary Skelter was challenging at times, but overall, the game was well balanced enough for a cool head to often prevail. It was tough, but not brutal. I quickly learned what a brutal dungeon crawler truly was when I decided to try my hand at Stranger of Sword City. Sword City is a first-person, dark fantasy dungeon crawler, released in Japan for Xbox 360, Xbox One, and PlayStation Vita in 2014. It wouldn't be released internationally until 2016, albeit only for the Vita here in North America, with a Switch port finally released several years later. Sword City boasts an unforgiving difficulty that will beat the ass of those coming in unprepared. I've never been one for super difficult games, yet I found myself willing to push through the tough-as-nails enemy encounters because of the unique spin it put on the dungeon crawling genre, focusing more on hunting down bosses throughout its various labyrinths, rather than simply trying to navigate through them. What this gives us is a flawed yet fascinating dungeon crawler that manages to stand apart from the sea of them available on the Vita. Equip your gear, step into the dark unknown, and let's turn the page to Stranger of Sword City for the PlayStation Vita. The story of Stranger of Sword City starts strong, with immediate intrigue and mystery. We play as a nameless protagonist, the sole survivor of a devastating plane crash. Awakening in a strange land, we meet an old man who offers to guide us to safety. The elderly man's intentions are anything but pure, and he attacks the hero in hopes of claiming an unknown power we seemingly possess. Before he can kill us though, we are saved by a high school girl named Ryu, who forces the elder to retreat. Ryu explains that we are in Escario, a land in an alternate dimension. Beings from Earth possess incredible powers when brought to Escario, and are referred to as strangers. Ryu leads the Strangers Guild, a group of fellow castaways who have also been brought to this strange world, working together to find a way home. The story is more of a background element than a central focus, yet it still fills Sword City with a sense of intrigue that lingers with the player throughout their dungeon crawling adventure. You'll meet other factions throughout the story, including the Kingdom led by Merilith and the Slums led by Alm. Though all three factions work together, it's clear they hold different philosophies and visions of the future, and you'll ultimately have to decide whom to pledge your allegiance to. Sword City is moody and dripping with atmosphere, brought together by Yoto Tsukamoto's phenomenal dark fantasy art style. That said, the translation can be odd at times. There weren't any typos that I noticed, but many times sentences didn't read quite right, or a character's response to another didn't make a whole lot of sense. I still enjoyed the bits of story that were there despite the wonky translation, but it lacks a level of polish one would hope for. In this case, it was probably a good decision to keep the story lighter rather than make it the main focus. Though the game has some pre-made characters you can choose from, your party will likely consist entirely of characters you've created. You can choose your character's name, portrait, and voice, giving you creative input into your team's overall aesthetics. You'll need to pick their race, each of which has certain strengths and weaknesses, as well as their class, which will dictate what skills they learn through leveling up. One of the more unique mechanics is the ability to select your character's age. The number will determine how many life points the characters will have. Life points don't refer to your character's total HP, but rather to how many times they can die. When a party member falls in battle, they'll die and lose a life point. Once the character's total life points hit 0, that character is gone, done, deleted, erased from the game. They are gone forever. A young character starts with 3 life points, but as the character ages, they lose a life point and gain a bonus point, which you can invest in any of your stats. So the older characters are stronger, but have fewer chances to fall before they're gone for good. It's up to you to decide how much you want to risk that. There is a way to restore life points, though the process takes a long time, or requires an absurd amount of gems, so it's worth having at least 2 on each party member. But if you want to play it like a Fire Emblem game or do a challenge run, you can set each life point to 1. Godspeed. Dungeon crawling takes place in first person, with enemies appearing both through random encounters and set locations on the map. Occasionally, you will find areas called hiding spots, which allow your characters to conceal themselves and wait for enemies carrying specific kinds of equipment. Gaining equipment through hiding spots is much more effective than buying it from the shop, as money is a rare resource, and the equipment in the shop is much weaker than what you can find. You're free to let enemies pass if they aren't carrying the equipment you're looking for, but the more you pass over, the higher the chance the enemy will strike first when you enter combat. Once you find the right prey to ambush, it's time to battle. In combat, all 6 of your party members will fight at once, with 3 in the front row, where they're far more likely to be targeted by enemies, and 3 in the back row, where they're more protected but struggle to hit the enemy. Enemies will also appear in up to 3 rows. Each class can only wield certain weapons, and each weapon can only attack within a certain range. Most weapons, like swords, hammers, and daggers, can only attack the row directly in front of them. Lances can attack up to 2 rows, while bows, slings, and magic can attack anywhere. Combat is tough and deadly. Enemies can outnumber you, and while attacks often miss, that's because when they do hit, they hit hard. If multiple enemies target a single unit, that unit can be melted without any chance to retaliate. For those looking for a challenge, Stranger of Sword City will test their strategic thinking and party building. Even the beginner difficulty is unrelenting. I enjoyed the combat quite a bit, but it's certainly demoralizing to watch a party get obliterated in an instant, which happens often, especially since critical hits from enemies are guaranteed insta-kills. When I lost a party member, I found it better to turn the game off and restart from my last save. Restoring a party member to life always costs more than I could ever afford, and the only way to reduce the wait time for the free restore was to go out and beat random encounters, which could take at least 15 minutes, usually longer depending on how long those fights took. It's a slog and a miserable way to get your party members back, but it also sucks to potentially lose half an hour to an hour of progress because of bad luck. At times, it can make it feel like you're not making any substantial progress, which casual players, myself included, may find frustrating. Players need to be ready to lose often and enjoy the feeling of overcoming an obstacle after numerous attempts. Otherwise, this game won't be for you. The big gameplay twist in Sword City is that your goal isn't just to reach the end of a dungeon, although that remains part of the experience. To advance the story, you need to beat monsters known as lineage types, essentially the game's bosses. Lineage types appear in certain locations in the dungeon, and sometimes require you to fulfill other conditions before they show up. It's up to you to explore the many rooms of the dungeon and track them down. Hunting lineage types was my favorite part of the game. Reading the clues you get from NPCs at Stranger Base and using them to learn where the lineage type is hiding was rewarding, like solving a puzzle. Sometimes you can stumble upon lineage types by accident too, so you always need to be ready to face a difficult foe. Upon defeating a lineage type, you'll obtain an item called a blood crystal. Blood crystals can be given to one of the 3 faction leaders in exchange for powerful abilities called divinities. Divinities are incredibly useful, such as restoring some health at the end of each turn, greatly enhancing defense, or enabling your party to launch an all-out attack with increased accuracy. However, whichever faction has the highest blood crystal count determines which route and ending you'll receive. So you'll want to balance which divinity you think will be the most useful with your preferred leader. Choose carefully and plan your division of crystals in advance. Of course, having 3 routes and endings give additional incentive to replay the game, with each playthrough taking anywhere from 30 to 50 hours. Later on, you'll be able to change your party's classes. For a fee and that character reduced by a handful of levels, you'll be able to class change and have that character start earning its respective skills. By changing through different classes, you can customize your party to have a unique spread of skills, and grant skills to classes that otherwise wouldn't be able to possess them. The system adds plenty of freedom for customization, and the possibilities available through class changes are numerous. I only wish it didn't come at the cost of levels. The experience gain in Sword City is slow, and you do not level up often. Even without class changes, the game necessitates a tedious amount of level grinding, especially since you'll want your party to be suitably powerful so they don't immediately get one-shotted by a lineage type. These moments are when the game slides to a crawl. From my very subjective experience, I didn't love my time with Stranger of Sword City. I was drawn in by its dark fantasy art style, and the combat and lineage type mechanics genuinely interested me, but in the end, I just wasn't the target audience. Its unforgiving difficulty and continual loss of progress frustrated me, and the sense of accomplishment when I finally pushed through a tough area wasn't enough to offset my negative feelings. However, if you are someone who loves a good challenge, and what you've heard interests you, then I strongly recommend you give Sword City a shot. The combat and class systems work fantastic, and the lineage type mechanic adds a unique spin to the usual dungeon crawling formula. If you don't mind a game blowing your ass out every now and again, and love dungeon crawlers, Stranger of Sword City might be your new favorite. At the time of recording, there are 2 versions of Stranger of Sword City, the original and Stranger of Sword City Revisited. The version I played was the original, because I wanted a physical copy for my Vita, but I recommend buying the Revisited version if you're not as picky as I am. It includes 3 new classes, some balance changes, and several post-game dungeons. There aren't a massive number of additions in Revisited, so if you already own the original, I don't think it's worth double dipping. If it's your first time buying though, you may as well go for Revisited for the extra content, unless you must get it for your Vita. Stranger of Sword City is a fascinating game with an instantly captivating story, and it stands apart from other dungeon crawlers. It's certainly not for everyone. Those looking for a casual experience will not find it here, but it can still scratch an itch many others may have with its tough-as-nails difficulty and class combinations. Stranger of Sword City will take the number 73 spot. In the end, it didn't fully resonate with me, though there were aspects I genuinely adored. Unfortunately, it's a little too much for me, and it ultimately took away more than it gave. That doesn't mean Stranger of Sword City is a bad game, far from it. But in this case, I played something that was a bit outside my wheelhouse, and it didn't pay off in the end. And that's all for this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider giving a like and maybe subscribing, as it really helps out the channel. If you're watching this and have happened to play Stranger of Sword City before, which of the 3 factions were your favorite? I went with Alm during my playthrough. I dug her philosophy of everyone, including criminals, deserving a chance to be happy. And she's so darn charismatic. I much preferred Meredith's skills, but I trusted her the least, so I avoided her when I could. Let me know which faction you liked best down in the comments. Also, don't forget to stick to the end of the video to see which game our wheel will select next. In the meantime, thank you all so much for watching. Take care, and may we see each other again when we turn to the next chapter in the Tome of Silver.